20,000 nerds armed with dice and opinions have answered my poll. What is your favorite tabletop role-playing game? But the results are still pouring in, so today we review just the first half. 10,000 votes, all from day one, that tell the surprising story of how Dungeons & Dragons is not quite as popular as it used to be, and how Pathfinder players are even more powerful than I feared. Because I'm Bob, this is where we learn how to have more fun playing RPGs together, and I just love overthinking what this sort of data says about our community. Some important notes first. 1. It took me way too long to figure out how to make this cool racing bar chart because, unfortunately, no freely available graphing program can process all the data at once or even this half of the data. So, 2. What you're seeing is the minute by minute how many votes were accumulated for every game on the ballot. Same as the raw data, just a little lower resolution, which is probably the case anyway since this is a screen recording because I didn't want to pay a monthly fee for a couple graphs. And 3. The full ballot has about 140 games suggested by my patrons, pulled from the top 50 most played games on Start Playing, and confirmed by some fellow Dungeon tubers. But oh my gosh, did you guys write in a ton more games that we'll have to check out later? Regardless, this graph only shows the top 20 games in a given minute, and it's really fast, so we'll be pausing it to see the progression of the TTRPG community's favorite games of 2026, Part 1. And yeah, with these 10,000 votes all coming from day one, thank you by the way for jumping right on the poll, that means this community is probably limited to my regular YouTube audience who saw that video on day one, but I'm not so sure because this poll totally clashes with the preliminary results that I saw among my patrons. Okay, boom. This first frame shows minute 2 of the live poll. So these people immediately clicked away from my 10-minute video to cast their vote, and I appreciate that level of enthusiasm. That's 2 votes for D&D 5e 2014, which we'll just call 5e for this video, and 1 vote for Pathfinder. Next, only 3 minutes later, so minute 5, still only halfway through that video, we've got about 40 total votes, now with D&D 5.5 in the lead, closely followed by Pathfinder. And right here, we can foreshadow another surprise in the data by discussing an elephant in the room. Dungeons & Dragons was the only game on the ballot that I split into multiple options for its multiple editions. I got a few comments from Pathfinder players who were not happy about this, claiming favoritism for D&D over Pathfinder. Which is true for me personally and most people, but also funny because I got at least one comment on the video claiming that I still clearly hate D&D. Anyway, my reason for splitting up Dungeons & Dragons was based on my assumption that posting a single D&D option would create such a massive outlier in its number of votes that every other game, like Pathfinder, would be nigh impossible to see in any visualization of the data. Of course, then one guy replied to that saying I should use a log scale, but no dude, linear scale is the easy one for 99% of people to understand at a glance, which is what I'm going for here. But the foreshadowed surprise is that this single Pathfinder option remains way more visible than I had assumed. Also at this stage, a few more games are pulling ahead. We see Shadow Dark, Draw Steel, and Other, the write-in option that got magnitudes more game titles that I could have put on a ballot, like today's awesome sponsor, Lands of Evershade, a unique hybrid between TTRPGs and board games for full fantasy campaigns without requiring a game master. Over 30,000 people crowdfunded the game, and it's easy to see why. Quote, "It's like playing tabletop Baldur's Gate 3, that's hilarious, with an Elden Ring aesthetic." End quote. Its player's handbook allows rich character customization with rules for tactical combat, and the world is ancient and mysterious, darkened by its fading sun. Heck, I've never promoted a board game before, but these incredibly detailed hand-drawn models hooked me immediately. I wish I had time to paint some of these before recording, but a bunch of them came with this earthy color and a dark wash that already looks amazing. So if you're looking for a solo or group RPG experience with dozens of hours of play, no GM, and supported by heaps of hands-on components, check out the late pledges for Lands of Evershade using my link below so they know who sent you. Now check this out. 20 minutes in, still about 200 votes, but who's that in the lead? Pathfinder. What? Again, my choice to split D&D's editions while keeping Pathfinder and every other game whole is technically why it's ahead of D&D, because 5e plus 5.5 votes would have beat it for sure here. But the other surprise is that among these first 200 or so people to vote, we're already seeing a strong diversity of favorite RPG titles. I fully expected D&D as a whole to soak up 50% of the votes, if not more. Instead, we're seeing roughly 20% D&D, about 15% Pathfinder, definitely in the same ballpark, and about 5% each for Shadowdark, Daggerheart, Drawsteel, and other. So while this top 50% is certainly concentrated around D&D-like fantasy games, this lower 50 is already starting to reveal everybody's other favorite genres. We got Mothership for sci-fi horror, Call of Cthulhu for cosmic and investigative horror, Blades in the Dark for whatever that's actually about, Lancer for big robots, and Vampire the Masquerade for early 2000s edgy and sensual vampires. What a time to have been in middle school. But this order of the other genres does shift around, so let's keep going. Jumping to the end of hour 1, about 1,000 votes, D&D 5.5 just barely ahead of Pathfinder, and it seems like a clear pattern of groups are emerging. D&D and Pathfinder, Shadowdark and write-ins, and then YouTuber D&D likes, Daggerheart, Drawsteel, Nimble, Vagabond, Deathbringer. You know, this seems like what we might expect, but I'm telling you, this order does not hold. 2 hours in, with about 2,000 votes, Pathfinder is back on top, and the write-ins are really pulling ahead of Shadowdark. We got Daggerheart leaping up ahead of its YouTube-centric cohort, DC20 now in there too. And this is a really good time to point out how this data from only 2 hours in might be mostly from my own YouTube audience, but it definitely does not match the data from my free Patreon audience. That poll only got about 350 votes, but the clear leaders, almost tied around 15% each, were 5e, 5.5, and Shadowdark. Technically, Other was the winner with about 40% of the vote, but out of the 122 write-in comments, only 4 people wrote in Pathfinder. So there could be a major disconnect where my YouTube audience has a ton of Pathfinder players, even though I've never made a Pathfinder video, but then none of them follow me on Patreon, even for free posts like that poll? I can't really explain that. Why are they lurking on YouTube and not on Patreon? Not to mention Dungeon Crawl Classics, one of my most covered games on YouTube, got only like 4% of the Patreon vote, and it's floating around, where is it, like 2% of this poll here. So to me, this means either I'm a terrible influencer because these votes are not based on the games that I've made videos about, or this poll did in fact quickly reach outside of my normal audience as intended, probably some combo of the two. But I guess let me know in the comments if you're a Pathfinder fan who regularly watches my videos even though I have yet to make a game about Pathfinder. It could still happen. It could happen. Now, if we just let this run for a second, D&D and Pathfinder battling it out, DC20 and Daggerheart climb, but then 5e 2014 starts taking over, and the Mat RPGs, Daggerheart and Drawsteel, leading that middle pack, basically tied with Nimble, now ahead of Shadowdark. Now we're like 10 hours in, 8,000 votes deep. Fantasy's still the strongest player by far, and that's gonna be the case, but now with Savage Worlds, GURPS, and D&D 3.5 now knocking around in the bottom half of our top 20. So pretty much all familiar faces dominating the top 20 favorite RPGs at this point. But don't forget, in 4th place, right behind D&D and Pathfinder, is Other, the write-ins, because apparently so many people have a favorite TTRPG that wasn't among the 140 games suggested by my patrons and the entire user base of Start Playing. So we're going to run out this clock and then take a peek at what's popular in that other category. Nimble just tops Drawsteel, Drawsteel takes it back and tops Daggerheart, and some shifting in the lower half as Old School Essentials finally appears in the ranking. Then we reach the end of this first half of the votes around 3 a.m. Eastern US, the day after the poll went live. So I'm not yet showing the final ranking, which we'll cover after the full poll closes and we see all those 20,000 plus votes. But for now, the current rankings are D&D 5e, 5.5, Pathfinder, and Other, holding about 40% of the votes altogether. Then we have this middle pack with Drawsteel, Daggerheart, Nimble, Shadowdark with about 20% of the votes, and bridging the gap to the bottom half, DC 20 and Savage Worlds, with some standout non-fantasy games like Call of Cthulhu for cosmic horror, Blades in the Dark for industrial heist fantasy, according to the internet, Lancer for the big robots, Vampire, and Mothership for sci-fi horror. But all of these top 20 RPGs doing very well compared to the 120 other games that didn't fit on this graph, and the checks notes 1,183 write-ins. Yeah, and remember that's from only half the votes. So the total number of write-ins as of recording this video is actually about 2,900, which will be a lot to sort through. So for this video, I'm only going to reveal the two most popular: Pathfinder and World of Darkness. Yeah, turns out a lot of people just use the write-in space to try voting a second time like I wouldn't notice. So I ignored those votes, but did not ignore the second votes when it was clear that they were writing in to specify an edition or a certain version of the game that they voted for. So between those write-ins and the people who actually voted Other and then wrote something in, the two most popular write-ins were Pathfinder and World of Darkness. For a quick count, Pathfinder 2e was the top write-in with 42 entries, and Pathfinder 1e had 10. And I gotta say, my favorite write-ins were these three Pathfinder players who used the write-in space to say that I should have really distinguished between 1e and 2e, but they themselves did not use the write-in space to distinguish their vote like everybody else. This guy even did it with a freaking winky face. And the various World of Darkness games got roughly 40 write-ins between Mage the Ascension, Mage the Awakening, Werewolf the Apocalypse, Changeling the Dreaming, Changeling the Lost, Hunter the Vigil, Hunter the Reckoning, Wraith the Oblivion, Chronicles of Darkness, and some write-ins just for World of Darkness. Again, the one I included on the ballot was Vampire the Masquerade, because I know that's the most popular version, but besides being hard to see on a graph, this is the other reason I didn't split up Pathfinder, World of Darkness, and every other game, knowing that I'd have to draw the line somewhere or I'd get stuck researching the multiple editions and many versions of every obscure TTRPG on the list. Not saying World of Darkness is obscure, but it is confusing when instead of numbered editions, it just uses the naming convention of creature, the blank. And then most of those games would only get a single number of digits anyway. So 100%. Next year when I repeat this poll, I will at least distinguish the editions of Pathfinder because it's easy and because they got a substantial amount of votes. But we'll talk about your other recommendations in the next video about this poll, where we will cover all 20,000 plus votes. Thanks again to everyone who took a little time out of their day to cast a vote and share this poll. Thanks to my patrons and YouTube members for being the test dummies for this project, and keep building.